What a bit. Yum, 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 yum. Chicken boobies. Yum, 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 yum. Guess I better make the video, eh? Right then, so something I need to mention. On the previous video, Mike Garwood picked me up for something, and he's correct. On the previous video, I mentioned, and I showed on the screen, the proper way to do the Allen Gibson coupling rods. I haven't actually done them perfectly properly, because when the bush goes on, and then you put the coupling rod on top of that, you're supposed to tighten the crank onto the bush, okay? Which is the proper way of doing it. The reason I sometimes super glue them further out is because it depends which rods you're using. Prototype rods and different companies will make rods with different thicknesses, and these are slightly thicker on some of the rods, which means if you tighten it all the way, it pushes the rod in. So basically I just put it out a tweak and then put a little bit of super glue on, and I find that works fine. The other option is you could just get the rods and just smooth them off on a file or something, and it would cost about 3 minutes. So there's different options. Right, with the light. Hopefully you can see these crank pins. The nut is now filed down somewhat. It's not sticking out so much. Whereas I've left one there sticking out more than the other. And the way to solve this, I find, is just literally file. Keep it pointed downwards so the flakes drop that way, and don't push on too hard. But I left this one purely just so I can bore the hell out of you and show you how to file, which I'm sure you know how to file by now, but whatever. How far you file it back is up to you, really. If you're modelling in the finer gauges, scales, you might want to file it back a bit more. Right. Once you've done that, you pretty much got everything running. All you got to do now is a brake gear. Now, like I said before, the brake pads are already on, depending on what gauge you want. And just as a note, the thickness of these frames obviously changes depending upon the chosen gauge. But if anybody wants a different width frame for whatever reason, then just let me know. Now, I've made these, the brake rigging, just to try and make life easy for some of you. But it has to be said, being printed, it's not exactly the finest of materials, and most of you might want to just do that with it and dump it and replace it with brass rods, which is not hard to make. You just solder some rods together, simple. But the way these are designed is you have little pips here. In the Wusserf and Busserf, they don't always turn out perfectly, and the Fudd they tend to. And what you can do if you want to, as an option, there are little dimples. Don't know if you're going to see them or not. Maybe not. There's little dimples on the inside where these locate, and they're just sprung in. If you want to drill those out, you can do. And these contacts as well, they might be in the way slightly, but basically I just kind of copied Hornby's idea pretty much, because it works. And that back piece will be glued on. Instead of flopping, you just glue that there, or you can keep it flopping, and that's basically it. Your brake rigging's on. Sticking up there because of the spring, the contacts need to be moved, adjusted. But that's the concept, so then you can just unspring it or unglue it, or however you've decided to set it up. Okay. And the only other thing needs doing is on the bodies. Well, not the only other thing, there's plenty of things, but here, you see on the sandboxes, there's little holes already indented. You may have to drill them out a bit more depending on how it's printed, but it's self-explanatory. You got a hole, stick a 0.45mm rod in there, bend it to shape relative to your front wheel, and that's basically it. Okay, on all of these, underneath here, where the coupling rods are going to go, this piece is usually in the way, because the real running plates in reality, they were quite thin, but because this is 3D printed, it means these have to be printed to a thickness that's a bit thicker than reality, and otherwise Shapeways won't print it. You have to get those green ticks, they won't even attempt it. So this has had to be made a little bit thicker this way, than we'd like, and for that reason the top of the rods often will bump on it slightly. To remedy that, and this is already in the instructions, I find there's 3 methods. You can get a nice riffler file like this, which is good for getting around the corners, okay, or you can just, you know, do that with your craft knife, or you can cheat and use a mini drill. It's bzzz, done. Okay, but I'm going to just use this for now. And it's the same as everything else, you just do it little and often. Probably want to take off about 0.4 mil, half a mil, or something like that. And also this FUD material files a lot nicer than the Wusuf, because with the Wusuf nylon you have to press on quite hard, and it kind of feels a little bit rubbery, it kind of fights against you, whereas this stuff, you know, it just flakes off nicely. It's sort of, it's a bit like you're filing plaster almost, very, very hard plaster. It just comes into very fine powder that you don't want to breathe in. But it files very nicely, smooths off easier. Obviously you don't want to go too much because you don't want to break through. If you do, you've got a slight repair job on your hands with little bits of plastic and filler, but now I'm not sure if you can see the height here is different to the height there now. Don't know if you can really tell the difference on camera. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but you just got to keep at it. Try not to knock the steps off when you do it. But this is it. I mean, it's not hard, it just takes a little bit of time. Let's give it a test. Well, take the flywheel off first because that's too big for this. See it catching? Keeps bumping. That's what we need to iron out. So just little and often and keep testing it. My camera memory ran out, so I'll put that on the computer, and in the meantime I'll file the rest of it myself, and I'll come back now. So it's not catching anymore. I need to adjust the contacts though, because you can hear it going tit 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 tit. It's scraping on the wheel rims. So that's basically it for the chassis running. I've shown you a very, very basic, easy way to get a fixed chassis working. There's many more methods. This is just a real simple way of doing it. There's much more sophisticated methods as well. I'm just showing you a simple way just to get you started. Other than that, and adding those the sandpipes, which I showed you, there's nothing to really tell you. You glue it in and bend it to shape, that's it. Now it's time to do the fun stuff, which will be painting it, I think, for the next stage. Paint it up, and you're going to have to put all the details on, like the handrails, the buffers, couplings, etc. So, yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.